Hello and welcome to Inside the Americas. I'm Delon D'Souza. Coming up on the show this week, a mask mandate thrown out in the United States by a federal judge. They are now no longer necessary when taking a train or flying. While the number of homicides have drastically gone down over in El Salvador, disappearances are becoming rampant. And take a trip to Machu Picchu from right here in Paris. A new immersive exhibition promises to transport you without you having to lift a finger. But first, a federal judge in the United States has thrown out the Center for Disease Control's mask mandate for transportation. Face coverings now no longer necessary when taking a bus, a train, or even flying. The judge ruling the National Public Health Agency had exceeded its legal powers by issuing the mandate, which was extended until early May.
It could spell the end of scenes like this. Masks are now optional on board all major US carriers, including American Airlines, United Airlines, and Delta, following a ruling by a federal judge overturning a US mask mandate on public transport. While companies welcomed the decision, they still urged passengers to be considerate. In a statement, Delta Airlines said,
Delta employees and customers may continue wearing masks if they so choose. We are relieved to see the US mask mandate lift to facilitate global travel, as COVID-19 has transitioned to an ordinary seasonal virus.
The ruling by Judge Catherine Kimball Mizell in Florida suspends the Biden administration's mask mandate. The requirement was supposed to stay in place until the 3rd of May, after the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention extended it last week. But Judge Mizell argued that the move exceeded the body's legal powers. The White House says passengers should keep wearing face coverings.
This is obviously a disappointing decision. The CDC continues recommending wearing a mask in public transit.
It's a sentiment that the New York Metropolitan Transportation Authority agrees with. It plans to keep its mask mandate in place, a decision that has divided New Yorkers.
It doesn't matter to me what they do in Florida. I'm still going to be wearing my mask.
You say I don't got no mask right now, so that's cool with me.
COVID cases are on the rise in the US, with over 36,000 new infections reported on average each day.
To our number of the week next, and it's 200,000. That's the amount of subscriptions Netflix says it's lost in the first quarter of this year. The company's problems look set to continue, as it's predicting a loss of a further 2 million subscribers between April to June.
Netflix subscriber numbers are down. The American streaming giant has built its customer base year on year since it set up business in 1997 as a mail-based DVD rental company. It's managed to transform itself into a leading streaming service with top shows like Bridgerton and Emily in Paris. But for the first time since 2011, it has seen more customers quitting the service than signing up. Netflix currently has a little over 221 million subscribers worldwide. First quarter stats showed there was a drop of 200,000. The company is projecting a loss of another 2 million in the current quarter. The company says some of these losses are due to the end of COVID lockdowns and a return to cinemas. Another reason is sanctions on Russia. The war in Ukraine pushed Netflix to pull out of the country, leaving it with 700,000 fewer subscribers. There's also more competition from its rivals such as Apple TV and Disney. Netflix was an early arrival in the streaming market and remains the second main player behind YouTube and ahead of its direct competitor Amazon. To stop the rot, Netflix is mulling changes that could lead to tighter checks on who is using the service. The goal would be to try to stop password sharing by several households. Netflix believes around 100 million homes are not paying for subscriptions. The company is also considering adding a cheaper advertising-supported service to raise revenues.
Now, a few years ago, El Salvador had the highest homicide rate in the world. Then security seemed to improve, and it was a sign of hope in a country where people had been coexisting for decades with maras, dangerous gangs with power extended to the highest political spheres. But last month, El Salvador plunged back into horror once again, with 87 murders committed in a single weekend. And even while the murders were down, another phenomenon became rampant: disappearances. Laurence, Cuvillier and Matthieu Comin report.
Since September 18th, The voices of Karen and Eduardo have no longer been heard in this house.
This was their room. Since the day they disappeared, I've knelt here every day, praying to God for their souls.
Yvette searched for her children during 3 months, and on Christmas Eve, their bodies were finally found. They died in the hands of the powerful Salvadoran gangs, the Maras. The main suspect, now in prison, had repeatedly tried to date Karen.
She turned him down 3 times. That's where the problem came from. She told him she didn't want to be with a pandillero, a gang member.
Until the end of March this year, homicides had dropped dramatically, knocking El Salvador off the list of the world's deadliest countries. But disappearances never went down.
It's not like before, when they would just leave the corpses in the streets. But still, every day many people disappear. It's just another way to murder. While I was searching for my kids, I met all these families who were going through the same ordeal. And it became clear that most of the victims had never been part of any gang. We're just so vulnerable here in El Salvador.
Upon coming to power in 2019, the young President Nayib Bukele negotiated with the leaders of the imprisoned Maras, demanding less killings in return for better living conditions in jail. The secret pact was revealed by a journalistic investigation, but the government remained silent. This policeman saw the effects on the front line.
We were gradually asked to withdraw from the most dangerous neighborhoods. So the gangs ended up ruling the place. They were no longer murdering people in the street, but we started to realize many people would go missing. Police officers talking to families in police stations would often talk them out of filing a complaint. That was to bring down the crime statistics, but meant they were just leaving the families to their fate.
But Yvette decided to speak up. She brought her children's case to the media and organized search groups. Her actions shed light on hundreds of unreported cases.
Many mothers of the disappeared have stepped out of the shadows. Now, when a person disappears, their family immediately starts searching. They speak up, and now they're listened to.
There is no official register of missing persons in El Salvador, but according to human rights organizations, an average of 4 people disappear every day.
Now, protests have broken out in the Peruvian city of Cusco. People are taking to the streets as the country grapples with its highest level of inflation in decades. The prices of fuel and fertilizer have soared as a consequence of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The high cost of living resulted in demonstrations last month, and the government has agreed to find solutions without offering any concessions just yet. Now, hundreds of tourists have been left stranded in Cusco as a result of the demonstrations, with workers' unions shutting down roads which lead to Machu Picchu. The ancient capital of the Incas can be visited right here in Paris thanks to a new immersive exhibition at the Cité de l'Architecture. Take a look.
Nestled among the clouds at an elevation of more than 2,400 meters above sea level, Machu Picchu is the masterpiece of their ancient Inca civilization. It was rediscovered in 1911 by an American who was hiking in the area. Over 100 years later, its treasures are being unpacked in Paris. On loan from Lima, these articles from pre-Columbian Peru are going on display at the Cité de l'Architecture et du Patrimoine Museum.
We do a check of the item before it's mounted. This control will also be done when it's unmounted and repacked.
Some of the nearly 200 pieces are around 3,000 years old. It's the first time they're going on show in France. These accessories were first worn around 2,000 years ago. A headdress in gold that references a mythological hero, and a necklace of beads that represents the link between the world of the gods to the world of the dead.
The leaders would wear these symbolic outfits that showed their roles in ancient Peruvian society, which was to ensure the link between the gods and their ancestors.
On these sacred objects, the Incas engraved their stories for eternity. They also celebrate the natural splendor of Machu Picchu, which is still exceptional today and is now a protected area. Each year, Machu Picchu attracts more than 1 million visitors. But if you can't make it to the Inca Trail, then this exhibition in Paris will transport you to Peru and its ancient wonders.
Now they say it's better late than never, right? And after 2 years of lockdowns, Rio de Janeiro will be holding its famed carnival this weekend. The city is promising a giant glittering spectacle. This year, samba schools plan on telling stories with social narratives, including one on the fight against racism in Brazil. That's it for this edition of Inside the Americas. From all of us on the team, thank you very much for watching.
3 years ago, the images of the fire that engulfed the medieval church of Notre Dame in Paris made headlines around the world. After the initial shock, thousands of men and women, including architects, scientists, or painters, started working around the clock to restore the building to its former glory. Notre Dame Revisited on France 24 and France24.com.